coming, the sun's zooming in, meltdown expected, the wheat is good there, engines stop running, but I have no fear, 'cause London is drowning. I live by the river.
Hello everybody and welcome to the By the Minute Arsenal podcast. It's another, dare I say, another good one with a couple of wins to discuss, which is jolly nice. I am Matt H. We also have Matt V. Hello Matt.
Afternoon. Yep. I think we said last week it might not be the most interesting week. It probably wasn't, but we got the wins that we needed.
We did, didn't we? It's very pleasing in that sense. Pete is not able to be with us today, but he has, most importantly, sent his predictions, but also sent some thoughts of the West Brom game which he was at last night. Interesting, looking through them, they're quite similar to some of the points I've come up with, but we'll save that for a bit. First of all, then, let's get into it, because we've got two games to discuss. We're bound to take a bit of time. We'll get into the League Cup game, which took place last week, the 20th. Arsenal played Doncaster and won 1-0. A little tight, not quite the goal fest we might have hoped for, but we got through. Interesting, well, quite a few interesting points to make about it, and we'll start with the team news. I think it was possibly the kind of team we were expecting, although I think perhaps a little surprise with Sanchez playing. The joke Pete made last week about Sanchez being saved for the Europa League, it's in the Europa League and the League Cup. Otherwise, though, it was a bit of a mix and match of people like Mertesacker as the captain, Ospina in goal as you'd expect. Elneny played. Wiltshire, of course, started, which was nice. But any particular thoughts on the Alexis starting, Matt, or indeed any other points about the team news?
Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise. It's like Wenger seeing how much he can wind Sanchez up. Seems to be the only real first-team player there. I assume it was just a case of getting more minutes, more fitness, and I'm sure we'll see him actually play more in the Premier League soon rather than the other two competitions. As for the rest of the team, yeah, it's pretty strong. It wasn't so much younger players, I guess. There was a lot of sort of fringe players, internationals, and I guess it was good to see Reece Nelson. I don't know what. I think he is more of an attacking player for the youth team, but he was more of a wing back. Maitland-Niles was obviously there, but yeah, it was a pretty strong team, one that maybe should have done a bit better than it did.
Yes, very good point. Now, things started not too badly. 25th minute, there was a nice interaction between Sanchez, nice ball in, and then Walcott got, very well taken by Walcott. Got on the end of it to put it past the keeper. 25 minutes in, 1-0, and you sort of expect that to get things going. And I have to be honest here, I did watch the game on a stream, but it did not have my undivided attention. I'm afraid to say. I checked with Pete. He wasn't. I thought he was at the game, but he wasn't. So he wasn't able to give any further details. I mean, it looked comfortable, but when it's 1-0, you're never quite sure. And I think you make a good point that with some of the players you've got there, you might expect better. But let's not worry too much about the result, because we won, and that's the main thing. But someone who did get a bit of some good reviews, as it were, was Wiltshire, similar to his whichever game it was when he had a brief appearance previously. Played the whole 90 minutes here, which is a good sign. Yeah,
for sure. I didn't watch the game like you, and having seen what people were saying of it as it was going on, it took all my strength to then watch the highlights.
Oh, you watched highlights? Oh, that's commitment.
And the highlights was a tenuous use of the word, but no, Wiltshire did look sharp again. He seems to be sort of something we don't really have in midfield. Comfortable on the ball, drives forward a lot, but still pretty solid defensively. So if he can keep up his fitness and sharpness, then I think we will see him probably increasingly moved towards the Premier League squad, hopefully, which I think would be good.
Yeah, and he was on the bench last night, wasn't he? I think, if I remember rightly, although he didn't get to come on. I mean, I don't know if there's much more I can say. Really, we Iwobi came on in the second half, as did Willock, De Silva at half time as well for Chambers. But I'm not sure there's much else to say. I think a bigger win would have been nicer, particularly as you get people going to these games who perhaps don't go regularly. I know as a season ticket holder, certainly the tickets get there's the opportunity for people who don't normally get them to go along. So it's in those senses you can have quite nice atmospheres. I mean, not quite Cologne like, but they can be good games. But we'll take the win. We won't try and talk anymore about the game because we're not particularly sure about that we've got anything more to say about it. I will note though the draw's already been made. I think it was made, dare I say, at a normal time, unlike the previous rounds of this competition. Home to Norwich. Any thoughts at all on that at this stage? Or I think it's towards the end of next month anyway, so we've got a bit of time to think about it if we must.
Yeah, it seems pretty much more of the same, but with a slightly better team in opposition. I imagine we'll play a similar team. I don't know how keen Sanchez will be to play again.
He might have got a taste for this now.
This might be his competition. Maybe he'll love it. But no, I imagine it will be more of the same. And hopefully we don't have that nervy period at the end of the game where everybody was absolutely dreading the possibility of extra time or penalties.
Yes, exactly. The idea there might be even more of it was quite unpleasant. But we're through. We're done. It's another tick on the season. And just a note, really, while I think about it, with the West Brom win last night, that's now 5 games in all competitions where we haven't lost, which is not a massive run, but it's nice. It's nice to get things moving along a little bit in the right direction, I think. So, and as part of that, great. We will take that. We'll take that win. Right. So 2 last night then. Arsenal playing West Brom, and as I alluded to, Arsenal won. 2-0 again, an odd game, slightly sort of low key, but we'll take the win. Particularly important after the weekend's results for the other teams towards the top of the table. Or should we start with this? Well, let's start with the team news again. El Neni started, which I was slightly surprised about. Sanchez also started, which I wasn't surprised about, but Ozil didn't start, stuck on the bench along with the previously alluded to Wilkshire. Any thoughts on the team?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting to see Ramsey was more of in an attacking role where Ozil usually is. Probably a role that I think would suit Ramsey more because he gets forward anyway. So I thought that was going to be interesting to look at. I don't know why. I don't know. Is Ozil? Did he have an injury? Still injured?
I always wonder about this. I mean, he did come on. Didn't he, just for a few minutes at the end? And I tend to think if he's on the bench, it's probably not an injury. So I wonder if it was just seen as, I don't know, maybe it was seen as a gradual reintroduction to the team. You never know quite. It's funny, isn't it, when you've got 7 people on the bench, you think, well, there is room there to have people with injuries. It's not like in previous days when you might have only had a couple. So I would guess it's just precautionary, and showing faith in the other squad players. So yeah, I don't think there was an injury, but and the fact he came on for a few minutes would suggest not. But yeah, it was interesting. He didn't just automatically go back in the first 11. Yeah,
it was. Further back, I guess it's good to see we finally now seem to have a settled back 5, wing backs playing as they want, and then the back 3. So yeah, I think that was to be expected. But yeah, the only real shock or thing of note was that Ozil wasn't in, which gets El Neni a game and pushed Ramsey further forward.
Yeah, well, let's go into the rest of the game. Then, worth noting, of course, that Kieran Gibbs was back for West Brom and seemed to be getting a lot of the ball, particularly later on. They seemed to be giving him the corners and free kicks. But that was just the ones I happened to notice. I think it's worth noting Nyom, if I'm saying his name right, the first gloves I've seen this season. Wearing gloves.
Oh, did he? Oh, God.
Just one of the first things I noticed, wearing gloves, which I'm surprised Tony Pulis allows that kind of thing, quite frankly.
Very early on.
I know, late September, and there he is. It was an interesting game, actually, wasn't it? Because although not necessarily particularly memorable, it had some moments, shall we say. And the first one of those we are obliged to mention is the West Bromwich Albion penalty shout fairly early on. I say penalty shout, it's not really, penalty basically is what I should be saying, where Rodriguez was brought down under a, should we say, somewhat reckless Mustafi tackle.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what he was trying to do. He seems to go to ground very easily at the best of times, so I mean, it just looked like a penalty straight away. I know there was a lot of discussion about Rodriguez staying down, or the fact he jumped up made the referee's decision, but I think you still have to expect the referee to give the penalty, and then that's a great save to tip it onto the post. And then Livermore did really well to miss an open goal from about 6 yards. So we got away with about 3 incidents in one there.
We did. I must say, maybe again I was looking at it through rose-tinted specs, but at the instant of the foul, as I can now call it a foul because it was, I sort of thought, oh, that we've got away with that one, but I wasn't convinced it was a penalty, weirdly. But of course, the replay showed it was, and the referee was right on it. So yeah, of course it should have been a penalty. The point about Mustafi not staying on his feet is an important one. You think someone's got to have a word about that because sooner or later, that's going to be you're going to be caught out doing that.
Yeah.
But so that was one incident in the first half. We then had. We'll stick to the defending bit. So if we zoom on a little bit, and we'll come back to Arsenal's first goal. Monreal's clearance, which was spectacular to say the least. So West Brom were through again. Ball was headed by, I've forgotten who it was now, but it wasn't Livermore, was it Rodriguez again?
I think it might have been Rodriguez,
it was. And Monreal somehow gets himself on the line, and even though he was in the right place, I was still thinking, well, he's just going to hoof that into his own net, but somehow managed to get it over the bar.
Yeah, he did well, considering he's pretty much on the line to get that over. We seem to be cut open very easily. Rodriguez was in a lot of space. Cech went for the huge swan dive, and Monreal did really well. I thought Monreal had a really good game. He's in a good run of form at centre back. And yeah, that was a real let off. And thankfully he cleared it over. As you said, I was expecting him to hoof it straight into the roof of the net, but he did very well.
It had that look about it, but he didn't. Now, because by that point, though, we were 1-0 up, thanks to our striker being in the right place at the right time. So Sanchez had a free kick. He was taking all the free kicks, and actually Pete had a point he made about that, which we'll come to later. Free kick off the bar, Lacazette there to calmly head it in.
Yeah, did well to anticipate it. I know Pulis was whining about a lot of decisions and Sanchez diving, but I think that was clearly a free kick. I think Foster might have tipped it onto the bar, so that's a good save, and yeah, a pretty easy finish for Lacazette to get us off to that start, which we probably needed, because West Brom was certainly more dangerous going forward than I anticipated when you saw their lineup, which was 5 defenders and 3 defensive mids.
That's it, and apart from the goal, although Arsenal was sort of doing okay in the first half, West Brom certainly had their moments. The last 5 minutes, I seem to remember, the first half were particularly, well, dicey might be overdoing it, but it wasn't the most comfortable period. Okay, second half then things did improve. Arsenal seemed to get a bit more in control, and then of course the penalty. Just to zoom forward sort of 20 minutes, because there wasn't a huge amount that happened, but we got that penalty. So what was that? That was Ramsey going around the outside of Neom, gloves and all, and compared to the West Brom penalty shout, which a clear penalty that wasn't given, this was a clear penalty that was given, but probably the foul didn't need to be committed in the first place, because Ramsey wasn't really going anywhere.
Yeah, it wasn't great defending to get so easily turned, but as you said, Ramsey wasn't really the quickest, so it's not as though he's particularly through on goal. He was just going to get to the byline, and Neom just sort of fell into the back of him. Pretty stupid, and Bobby Madley turned up for us, gave the penalty, and I'm a lot more confident with Lacazette taking penalties than a few of the players we've seen take them over the last couple of years.
Well, this is interesting, isn't it? Because apparently this was a decision sort of made having seen them all in training, to give Lacazette the ball for penalties. Pete makes one of his notes, which is that as far as he's concerned, Lacazette can continue to take penalties. I mean, Foster went the right way, of course, but it turned out not to be quite, from West Brom's point of view, not quite good enough. And that sort of killed the game, really, didn't it? And we sort of coasted then, I think, through to the 90 minutes.
Yeah, I don't think West Brom had a chance at all in the second half, not that one that I remember anyway. I think we maybe had another couple of half chances to score again. I don't know if Lacazette might have wanted to stay on a bit longer to see if he could get his hat-trick, but we did leave the subs later than usual, so he had a good chance.
We did. You've it's like you've read my notes, because the subs thing, and actually Pete's made a comment on this as well. So we made the subs very late. Let me get this thing in front of me here. So Well, all in the last 8 minutes, basically. The oddest one in particular seems to be the Maitland-Niles one. And Pete puts it better than I have, which is that why did we actually send him on after he'd waited for 3 minutes? Ball goes dead, he goes on, and it was, 5 seconds, I think, he played for, which was a bit of a shame for him, but I suppose Wenger, once he committed to making the substitution, wasn't going to change his mind.
Stubborn to the last.
Well, there's a wider point about the substitutions, actually, rather than the funny bit of someone only getting a few seconds. Given that we have a game on Thursday and then a game early on Sunday, should we have made some subs, with the game saved with sort of 20 minutes to go rather than 10? I appreciate it perhaps doesn't make a massive difference, but that was what was bugging me slightly.
Yeah, I don't know if it maybe gives some clues as the kind of team Wenger's anticipating playing on Thursday, whether he's expecting there to be a lot of changes, and so he thought he'd just keep the other players fresh for Thursday. Because, if not, we have got a pretty crowded schedule. It would seem strange not to rotate, but maybe he's just thinking the likes of Giroud, Wilshere, they're going to start on Thursday, so just keep them for that.
Yeah, makes sense. So we got the win then. Before we go further with that, let me just zip through Pete's notes, the ones I can see. He points that even from where he sits, and I know where that is, it's a long way from where the where the incident happened. It should have been a West Brom penalty. He confirms that. He loved the clearance from Nacho. Get my teeth in. He wants Koscielny to play in the centre all the time. He obviously likes that. Mentions that weren't so organised in the first half, but got a bit better in the second at the back. And he makes a couple of points about Sanchez, which I'll sort of bring together. He would like someone else other than Sanchez to have a go at free kicks, because I think he gets the impression he's doing it too much. And then he also links that with another point, which is Sanchez, as far as he's concerned, is still doing this thing where he wants to prove he's the best player on the pitch and do everything himself. We talked about this last season. In a way, I'm sort of happy to see him committed, but yeah, there's a few times when it doesn't seem to quite come off.
Yeah, he does only seem to pass when he's sure he'll get it back immediately. I don't know, because Kolasinac seemed to be a bit less effective because Sanchez was not playing him in the overlap as much. He's sort of more cutting in and playing that sort of chipped ball to the far post that he does. But yeah, I'd agree with that. Sanchez sort of a lot keener to try and prove he's the best player there. But yeah, as you said, I think I'd probably rather that than him sort of showing no interest and stropping around for a season.
For the moment, yeah. I mean, it might get dull if it keeps happening, but we'll see how it goes. One interesting point Pete made, which be interesting to know what you think. He remains, he says, these are his words, slightly unconvinced or still unconvinced about Lacazette. Now, I know he scored 2, but he's talking about his role other than the finishing. Now, some people would already say, well, it doesn't matter if he can score 2 goals every game. The way Pete puts it, I quite like. He said he player cammed him last night, so obviously just focused on him for a bit, and not quite sure what else he brings to the team. I can see there might be a point to saying that, but then perhaps last night wasn't the kind of game to show that. But I know what he's getting at. There's been some particularly away games where perhaps has he sort of not disappeared, that would be unfair, but perhaps not quite done what we might have hoped. I mean, it was still relatively early in the season, of course. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think from what I've seen so far, he does seem to be the type of striker that will be in the box, and if the ball drops to him, he'll score. So he heavily relies on the service, because yesterday, as you said, apart from when the free kick dropped him and the penalty, wasn't really involved. He doesn't have a lot of touches in the game at all. He lays the ball off a bit, but he's not the kind of striker that has, say, 10 shots a game and will score a couple. He sort of only seems to have 2 or 3, and he'll score from those. So in some ways it's good to have a clinical striker that I think we've lacked, but I definitely agree that compared to someone like Giroud, who sort of likes to be involved in the game, sort of flicking it round, linking the play up, I think Lacazette's more just focused on standing there, being ready for when the ball drops to him.
Yeah, well, we'll keep an eye on him, of course, the rest of the season, see how that works. I like that way of sort of summing it up, though. The other point Pete makes that I'll mention here is Ramsey being that he doesn't like Ramsey basically in the role that he was in last night, that sort of right side up front kind of thing. Wants him back in the centre, which seems like a reasonable point to make. We'll see what happens, of course, over the next few games. But there we are. I mean, that's us covered the game. I think, given it wasn't the most exciting game, but it had those few moments in. The point about Pulis moaning about Sanchez cheating, the thing I read this morning suggests like he meant the first tackle on Sanchez. He went over very easily. So before we'd even got into the rest of the game and the penalty shout and all that kind of stuff. So.
It was his post-match interview was. For somebody who proclaimed he wasn't going to talk about the referee, it was incredible because halfway through moaning about Sanchez cheating, he then goes, "Oh, when we came here in 2015, their free kick was a dodgy decision as well." Unbelievable memory going back 2 years and moaning. I mean, it was just incredible to see somebody so bitter and yet trying to seem so non-phased by it. Yeah, referee happened, you can talk about it, I won't. As he went on and on.
So kind of sort of passive-aggressive kind of thing.
God.
That is now 11 games, I think, for him. 10 or 11 now at the Emirates, where he hasn't just not won, he's lost every time. Which is nice. It's sort of it gives you a warm glow. Well, after that result, then we end up 7th in the table. Take that, Huddersfield, as I wrote last night. So we've gone above Huddersfield, and Burnley and Newcastle last night. There you go. There's 3 teams you'd hope we weren't struggling to get above in September, but there we are. We're starting to look, dare I say it, more in the kind of area we'd like to be at the end of the season and hope to be at the end of the season. Yeah. Only a couple other sort of slightly random points I noted down. It's always Aaron Ramsey who gets interviewed afterwards. I noted. I don't know if that's just me, either on his own or in a pair. Last night he was chatting to the Sky chaps. I know he seems like a perfectly nice young man. It just seems interesting. I don't know. I just wonder if there's a rota or they just say, Aaron, get out there and do your thing. And there were no offsides in the game, according to the stats I was looking at, which I thought was worth noting. I'm not necessarily expecting much further comment, but I thought that was of interest. But I like that kind of thing anyway.
Yeah, I guess I didn't see any, but you always expect a couple. Usually Giroud or Walcott. I guess they weren't playing.
True. Maybe that's it. Maybe the personnel, but no offsides for either team. That was the thing. No one offside at all throughout the whole game. So that we almost didn't need the linesman. All right then. Well, great. Well, we'll take the win. So not a spectacular performance, but there were a few issues that were of interest. Well, the rest we needed the win as well because the rest of the Premier League contenders, if I can put it that way, had all won over the weekend. Spurs at West Ham, Man City, who are looking, I'd say, very scary at the moment. Very easy winners over Palace. United away at Southampton, Chelsea at Stoke, even Liverpool at Leicester. And in fact, if we're going all the way down, even Everton managed to win at home to Bournemouth. The other news that we should mention, of course, is the bad news about Danny Welbeck. We're going to miss him for a few weeks. I don't know if we have a more definite time than that because of his injury. Pete actually notes that he thinks we're going to miss him over the next few weeks. I think we're certainly going to miss him in terms of the options he gives for some of these other games, aren't we?
For sure. His work rate's good. When we have so many games, we need as many options going forward as possible. So hopefully he'll be back as soon as possible, and it's not one that goes on and on throughout the season. Yeah,
that's the problem with whenever there's an Arsenal injury, isn't it? You always have that slight concern. Well, they say it's going to be X number of weeks. Is it actually going to be twice that, or a lot more added on? Because we never seem to commit to a day they're going to come back, and then it's too late. But all right, well, good luck to him. Hope he gets better soon. Right, predictions now. Before we have our predictions and previews of a couple of games coming up this week. Matt, you need to take a bow because for the first time between all three of us, it took about 8 games, but you actually hit the nail on the head with your West Brom prediction, with a 2-0 prediction.
Nostradamus. I knew it.
About as accurate as Nostradamus in terms of the number of attempts we've all had between us. Having said that, Pete and I did both go for wins, and we all went for wins against Doncaster. None of us got the score right, though. We were all somewhat optimistic in terms of the number of goals we'd scored. But we got points, but you now have counted a 3-point lead in the prediction competition, although a long way to go, of course. Right, well, let's start with this week. Now, Thursday, we are away to Bate, or Bate Borisov, in Belarus. I have predictions from me and Pete. I've already put them into the old spreadsheet. But as you're here, Matt, let's hear your thoughts and a prediction, please.
I think we'll play a pretty weak team. Well, not weak. Similar to the one we played in the other game. I think there'll be a lot of changes considering how many games we have. I don't think we'll keep a clean sheet, unfortunately. But I think we should have enough to comfortably win. So I'll go 3-1 Arsenal.
3-1 Arsenal. Let me write that down. Find the right place in the spreadsheet. There we go. Well, it's interesting. I've shared some of your uncertainty. So I've gone for 1-1 on the basis that I don't know what team we're going to play. I'm not going to pretend I know anything about Bate at this point. But I'll go with the 1-1. Tricky away game after we played on Monday night. We don't know we don't really know what kind of way it's going to go. So I've gone for trying to be a fairly conservative 1-1. Pete has he's gone for a 4-1 Arsenal win, which seems.
Ooh.
I don't know if he's been at the source or something, but I'm going to double check his email to make sure I actually got that right. Yeah, definitely 4-1. He's gone for 4-1 to Arsenal, so we'll see how that plays out. And then, of course, on Sunday midday, we kick off at home against Brighton. I've gone for a 3-0 here. I know Brighton had a decent result at the weekend when I think they beat Newcastle, but I think these are the kind of games we should be winning and fairly comfortably. I've gone for 3-0. Pete has gone for 3-1. I don't know any of his reasoning, but I'm guessing it's something similar along those lines. By coincidence, we've both picked the score that we picked for the West Brom game, so perhaps we're hoping this time it will come true. So Matt, given your stellar league performance last time, what are your thoughts and prediction for this one?
I've consulted the tea leaves. I feel like I know it's kicking off very early, but I feel like this should be similar to a West Brom game, but with Brighton not being as good defensively as West Brom. I can see Lacazette scoring again. I'm even branching out into goal scorers now.
That's crazy, Tony.
No, I think we'll win comfortably. I will go 4-0 Arsenal.
4-0.
Yeah.
The point you make about the early start is a good one, because I know in the past, or my feeling is in the past, we've always had a struggle with the early start, but with any like Brighton will as well. It is an early start, but okay, we're all going for wins for that one. Okay, so we will see how we do next week. We will be back next week with the pod. After that, there's an international break. Of course there is, so we get a bit of a break after that, but we'll be back next Monday, I expect, with the pod. But I think we're done for now. So, Matt, thank you very much for your company.
Thank you. We got through a pretty bland but successful week.
There we go. And I'll take those. Maybe not every week of the year, but quite a lot of weeks. I'll be happy if we can rack up a couple of wins. Well, hopefully we'll have a couple of wins to talk about next week. Thank you to Pete, even though he's not here, for submitting his thoughts and predictions. And thank you very much for listening. And we will speak to you next week. Take care. Bye bye.